The following is an excerpt from the new book from the late Candy Palmater, a biography of her life called Running Down a Dream. Now, it's officially released today in Canada, throughout the world, Tuesday, October 18th. Candy was a great friend of mine over the years. We went to the same high school together. We crossed paths many times because we both come from northern New Brunswick. Now, the book is available through HarperCollins at various numerous outlets across Canada. If you want to pick it up, it's probably one of the must-reads of the fall. Again, the following is an excerpt from the book. My great-grandfather was Louis Thomas Jerome. He was the last hereditary chief in the Île Bar. At that time, the reserve wasn't located where it is now. It was further down the road in a little place called New Mills. As part of the colonization process, many First Nations in Canada had their land taken and removed to less valuable bases. The Île Bar did not escape upheaval, and the community was moved from New Mills to the spot where it is located today. Now, traditionally, chiefs assumed power through heredity. As I said, my great-grandfather was the last to hold a hereditary chief position in the Île Bar. Through the Indian Act, the hereditary system was replaced with an electoral system. That system, as legally prescribed to First Nation communities, has created many of the modern-day problems that affect Indigenous peoples. An electoral process is debilitatingly costly and creates an environment ripe for nepotism when it's forced on small communities every 2 years, which was the case for decades. My great-grandfather had 6 children, all girls. Not one of his daughters grew taller than 5 feet. Obviously, at 5'10", I got my height from a mother's side of the family. Those daughters were small, but they were pretty tough. My grandmother was one of those 6. Her name was Greta. She married a white man from Toledo, Ohio, named William Palmater. When she married him, according to law at the time, she lost her status and had to leave the community. Palmater was a logger and a drinker. The New Brunswick International Pulp and Paper Mill had steady work for loggers in the woods surrounding Dalhousie, so he spent a lot of time in the bush, and my grandmother spent a lot of time with other men. She had 4 sons and a daughter. My dad was the second youngest. The oldest was Frank, then Uncle Lummy, actually Walter. I didn't find out Lummy was a nickname until I was 17. Then there was a daughter named Dolly, my dad, then his younger brother John. Although it's a mostly family story and not proven, it seems that not all of my grandmother's children were William Palmater's children, although his name appears on all of their birth certificates. When you look at pictures, all the kids have similarities, but they also are similar to men who were my grandmother's drinking buddies. I always thought my Uncle John looked like one of those drinking buddies. That man was also a bit of a father figure to my dad, and he remained close friends until the man's death. My siblings and I look a lot like the children of Île Bar elder Margaret LeBillois. She was known to me my whole life as Aunt Margaret. Her husband and my dad were first cousins, and we were taught to call all relatives older than us uncle or aunt. It wasn't until shortly before my father's death that we figured out why we share so many features with the LeBillois. According to Aunt Margaret, she and Daddy were half-siblings. Apparently, my grandmother had an affair with her father, Jim Pictou, and my dad was the result. Jim Pictou was originally from Pictou Landing, Nova Scotia, which also explains why there are folks in that community who look a lot like my cousins and me. Now, Daddy didn't talk about who his father was or about his childhood. It was, by all accounts, very painful. My mother knew some of his secrets, which he insisted she would never share with me. He often said he wished he could develop a pill that would allow him to forget his childhood. This was usually said with tears in his eyes, and then he would shut down. One story, however, that he told often was about the day the bank locked his family out of their house. He would get a faraway look in his eye, and then he would recount the story as though he was watching a film of it in his mind. Before I share the story with you, here's a little backstory so you understand the context. Now, when my Uncle John was born, William Palmater left. Daddy felt this was because he realized Uncle John was not his child. No one knows for sure why this man, whom I refused to call my grandfather, chose to abandon his wife and children, but that is exactly what he did. He went back to the States without a word and apparently started a second family in Ohio. They only heard from him one more time when Daddy and his brothers were overseas fighting in World War II. Now, he contacted my grandmother and said he wanted to come see them when he returned to Canada. Upon hearing this, my father stayed in Europe for an extra year after the war in order to avoid a meeting, something he regretted for the rest of his life. Eventually, William Palmater died in Ohio. He had never been able to control his drinking, and he understands that he died alone and drunk in the street and lay in the morgue for days before his Ohio family claimed his body. Left alone with 5 young children, my grandfather couldn't pay for the house in Tallahassee. The Indian Act prevented her from returning to the reservation. This is the story that Daddy recalled with complete clarity. He said it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a cold winter Tuesday when a man from the bank came and evicted them from their house. As Granny and her 5 children stood desperate on the street, the man from the bank put a lock on the door. Granny did not weep, nor did she beg. She looked at the banker and sternly proclaimed, "You will die with a crooked face." Call it a coincidence or call it the curse of a woman done wrong, but that banker had a severe stroke from which he never fully recovered. His face was disfigured by the stroke. He lived the rest of his life until his death with a crooked face. This was an excerpt from Running Down a Dream, a memoir by Candy Palmater, published by HarperCollins Publishers Limited, all rights reserved. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I encourage anybody listening to this to find out more information on Candy, to see her CBC efforts, IMDb, all different types of sites. Candy was a friend of mine that I learned so much from because she was herself. I was a little bit older than her, and her time at DRHS, like mine was a time of growth. Sure, there were obstacles, but we overcame them. Not a day goes by since she died on Christmas Day 2021 after a short illness that I don't miss her. And I thought I'd be doing publicity for Candy throughout this year, prior to the book and after, as a celebration of who she was. So for me to read an excerpt, it's not the same because she's not here. So if you're a friend of Candy, a colleague, family, whatever, if you just know her from CBC or The Candy Show or Trailer Park Boys or Skindigenous or The Social, she was busy, or knowing her being a lawyer, a stand-up, working for the government of Nova Scotia, what a force she was. She did so much in her half decade, a little bit extra in life. I wish I could keep up with her excellence. I've had some success as a journalist, but what she's done to put Northern New Brunswick and Point La Nim on the map, even like her short episodes of Run the Burbs, to see someone we love so much to be on CBC yet again, because she did her own show, CBC, guest host in Q. She was a guest host on various shows, Canada Reads as well. Having her not around, it's a tragedy 24/7. I can just imagine what the family feels. We feel it hard in Northern New Brunswick because we're tight. There's 50,000 people in Northern New Brunswick, the real North Shore, not Memoir, from Campbellton to Batters. And she was our Candy, and we miss her. So, Candy, I hope you're looking down. Buy lots of it. Buy as many as you can. If you have any Aboriginal people in your family, or you have any friends in the States that want to learn more about our Mi'kmaq culture, please do so. So, thanks for listening, ladies and gentlemen. And if you want to celebrate Candy over Halloween, dress in pink. Don't be afraid to put a big candy on the front of your shirt. And she was such a girly girl sometimes, even though she was one of the best queer performers in the modern era of Canadian comedy. She was a diverse personality, and that the world is a better place because he had a taste of candy for 50 plus years, and the world's a lesser place that we can have a taste of candy in the years to come. But we'll keep her alive, won't we? Thanks for listening. Bye.